Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and we're taking a look today at the DJI Mavic Air. This is a new little drone from DJI, but it has a lot of the features that their larger drones do, and it's a lot more portable. We'll be taking a look at this and seeing all the things it can do, including some image samples as we work our way through this review. But I do want to let you know, in the interest of full disclosure, that I paid for this with my own funds. All the opinions you're about to hear are my own, and no one has reviewed this content before I uploaded it. So let's get into it and see what this thing is all about. So let's take a closer look now at the hardware. What really attracted me to this drone is its small form factor, yet it has just about every feature that my larger Phantom 4 did. I had the original Phantom 4. I liked it, but it was very big and hard to travel with. This one is a lot smaller than that one is. In fact, when you fold it down here, it makes it very portable and about the size of a small camera. So what you do here is just fold in its propellers like so. You got to keep them in the right position there. You flip it over here and you can just fold these other propellers down like that. And then you put on this little cap here on the front of the camera to protect its gimbal that's built in. It's got a great gimbaling system here, just like the Phantom 4 does. It snaps down like so, and now you've got this really small form factor that fits into a case that, again, is about roughly the size of a small camera or camcorder. It's really not all that large here, as you can see, and you can very easily throw this in a bag. In fact, I think my little case for my noise-canceling headphones is larger than this one. You do have to carry around the controller as well and the AC adapter, but all in, this is a lot less to carry than my Phantom 4. And you can see a shot I did a little earlier of this case next to my Phantom 4 case, yet I get most of the same functionality with this one. Even though it might be a little bit lighter, it's still, for my purposes, been a really great experience. So I'm really quite happy with the form factor here. And as you'll see as we work our way through the review, I'm also quite happy with how it functions, even though it is a smaller drone that might get knocked around in the wind a little bit more than the other one. So very easy to get it out of its little case here and up and running, and you are ready to go once more with another flight. And it also includes, of course, a controller that works with your mobile phone. It's right now in its folded up configuration, but when you're ready to fly, you just open up the bottom of this thing here, get the antennas out, and slip your phone in to use it with the drone. And it will support phones that have USB Type-C cables, lightning cables for the iOS platform, or micro USB as well. They give you these little cables here in the box to get you that direct connection from the phone to the controller. It's also possible to control the drone with your phone directly, but you'll get a better range out of the remote control here, and it is a much better experience having tactile controls, in my opinion. The other thing they let you do here is take off these control sticks and store them in here. So when you want to fit this thing in a bag and not worry about the sticks getting snapped off, you can store them in this little pocket here for later. If you happen to lose these sticks, they have an extra pair of them in the box, so you do have that peace of mind there, and you are good to go. I typically just leave them screwed in until I'm really traveling somewhere where I want to get this thing down and more compact. But overall, a very, very nice experience here for traveling for sure. And the AC adapter isn't that much larger either, so it's really, really about what you would normally carry with you if you had a camcorder or something. You charge the battery that is on the bottom of the drone here. It just slips out like so. There's like these two little latches here that you use to undo it there. It snaps in very securely, and then you can pop the battery out here. They've got a adapter here that you put on the top of the battery to charge it, and then there's a USB connector here on the front of the AC adapter that you use to charge the controller. And to charge it, you just pop out the phone connector and then plug in a micro USB cable from the AC adapter to charge the remote, and you are ready to fly again. Now, I got the regular package, which is $799. That includes everything you see here: the controller, the AC adapter, the battery, and the drone, of course. You get an extra set of propellers for the drone as well. They also have a Fly More version that has more batteries and some accessories that cost about $1,000, but I figured I just need another battery at some point, so I went with the lower cost option for this. I also went with the $89 insurance program that they have that will give you 2 drone replacements if you happen to crash the drone somewhere out in the field. I think you do have to recover the drone to send it back to them, but I figured, you know what, if I'm going to be flying a lot more and maybe taking some more chances with this little drone, I should probably get that insurance policy, which is what I did. So I've got the drone now powered up, and I've also connected up the remote control along with my phone. And we're Chromecasting the phone back to my video system right now so you can see exactly what the drone sees. There will be a little bit of lag here just because the Chromecast takes a little time to process the video, but generally I found the response to be very responsive, very lag-free while I'm flying it around, so just bear that in mind. Now, I'm not going to fly this around the studio just because I don't want to break anything. They do give you some bumpers for the propellers for indoor flight, but I really don't recommend this as an indoor toy. This is really something you'll want to fly outside. Now, you'll see on the screen here, we've got feet indicators, and there is a sensor on the drone, 2 of them, in fact, in the front, to measure in 3 dimensions how close objects are to the drone. And you can see as I move my hand here, it's impacting that sensor. It also has one in the back, so as I move the back of the drone here around, you can see that it's finding the wall a little further away from me in the room here. And what it's doing with this by default is just measuring a way to prevent itself from flying into things. So if it's going forward, it won't fly into something in the front, but if you fly it backwards, it will also prevent the drone from flying into something when it is going backwards. However, it doesn't see things on the side. So if you are doing something where you're flying this way or that way, you'll want to be careful because it can't really see too much here in its blind spot on either side. So front and back, you're fine. The sides, you'll definitely want to exercise some caution. They also have a pretty cool mode that you can implement while you're in flight to have the drone automatically fly around things. And I tested that outside a little earlier where I had the drone fly at me. It saw me and it very gradually increased its altitude to go over me, and then it went back down to the altitude that I had set up before. It really does a little bit of forethought about where it's going to go. So sometimes it might fly around an object, other times it goes over it, and it uses those sensors to figure it out. These sensors, though, do not replace common sense, so don't do anything stupid with it, but it will try its best to avoid objects, but by default, all it will do is stop. You have to actually enable that fly around mode in order to do that. DJI has some really good tutorials on their YouTube channel, which I definitely suggest that you check out. Now, a really cool feature of these DJI drones, and I think their real hallmark feature, is the gimbals that they have on these devices here. So you can see right now I'm controlling the angle of the camera here with this rocker switch on the back of the controller here, and that allows you while you're in flight to take things like this where you have the camera just pointing to the front of the drone, but if you're up in the air, maybe I'll put it over my keyboard here, you can see that I can rotate the gimbal. Let me go in the other direction here. I can rotate the gimbal down here and actually have the gimbal point straight down while I'm flying. So you do have a lot of cool options for how to fly the drone. And what's nice about this gimbal too is that it keeps the image really stable. Even when you're moving the drone like this, you can see it's doing a pretty good job of keeping everything steady and stable. So when you're out in like turbulent wind and whatever, you really don't pick up a lot of movement here as the drone is flying around. So it really does a very nice job of keeping things stable. Surprisingly so, because I expected this not to be as good as my Phantom 4 was, but it really is doing just as well with a much smaller mechanism and a smaller camera. And it's a very fun drone to fly, although I do recommend starting out in its default configuration, which is a little more forgiving. When you're starting to feel more confident and you've got a lot of open space in front of you, you can switch it into sport mode here. And what that does is makes the sticks a lot more sensitive, and it makes the drone a lot more maneuverable as a result. But it also turns off the sensors that prevent it from running into things, and it also unlocks the drone's top speed. So you'll probably get this thing up to about 40 miles per hour, which is what I did, depending on what direction the wind is blowing in. And it goes to that speed very quickly, given how small and light it is. It also turns on the dime, too, which is a lot of fun. But just know that when you are in this sport mode, it's a lot easier to hit something and cause damage to the drone or property. So you'll want to really work up to that point, and parents definitely supervise the kids while you're doing that. Now, battery life on the drone, they rate at about 20 minutes or so, and I would agree with that assessment, but it will vary based on how aggressively you're flying, as well as wind conditions. Windier conditions are harder for the drone to fly in, and as a result, it works harder to maintain stability and maintain constant speed while in the air. So again, you'll see some variation there. I think having a second battery might be a good idea. They have a lot of autonomy built into this to prevent you from flying it too far. So if it detects that it can't get back, it'll actually force itself to turn around and come back to where it started from to prevent it from running out of juice and crashing somewhere. So there are some safety controls built in, and they are always updating things to try to make it better for you. But generally, I've been very cautious with mine. I see when I get about 20% or so on the battery, I usually bring it back and start charging up again just to be safe on it. Now, DJI rates the range on this drone at about 2.5 miles or 4,000 meters here in the United States based on FCC regulations. Your country's telecommunications authorities may give you less than that to work with, so you'll have to look on the marketing materials for your home market to see what kind of range you can expect from it. But it does use Wi-Fi to communicate between the drone and the controller, which I found to be a hit or miss kind of thing, and it wasn't as good in my yard as the Phantom 4 was. So as I was flying this around my backyard, the trees and maybe some neighboring access points were interfering, and I wasn't getting complete signal drop-offs, but I was losing the range very quickly the further the drone got away from me. When I was at the beach where I had clear line of sight with no obstructions, it was a lot better, so I didn't really have those issues there, but I have seen some differences in performance depending on time of day and where I was flying the drone around my house, for example, and where I was positioned with this drone that I did not experience with my Phantom 4. So just be mindful of that. If you're in an urban environment, I would expect you'll be getting more problems because there are a lot more access points running Wi-Fi in those areas. So again, it's going to vary widely based on where you're flying the drone and what is around you. One other thing to note on here is that this drone is small, as I've been talking about, and the further it gets away from you, the harder it is to see. And here in the United States, the law is that you have to be in direct line of sight to your drone at all times. And if you can't see it, you're supposed to bring it back so that you can see it to continue flying it safely. So it isn't going to take long before the drone's going to be beyond your line of sight, and I think you will certainly want to be mindful of that, and it is really hard to see when it's up in the air. Now, ultimately, these devices are flying cameras, and one of the things that DJI has been bringing to the mix over the years is a lot of autonomy around image capture. When we looked at the Phantom 4 a year ago, we were able to track a car on the ground, for example, automatically, visually with the drone. I was driving around and the drone was chasing me, which is really cool shots that you can get from that. This will do all of that. It'll orbit buildings, for example, to give you a really nice circular pattern around something. Again, you just dial these things in through the app and it does it for you. This drone adds a couple of other items into the mix, including one called Smart Track, where you can control the drone without a controller at all. You're able to get the drone to take off just by putting the palm of your hand out like this. You can get a picture taken just by doing the peace sign. You can start a video just by doing a frame like that. And you can even control how far away the drone gets from you by waving your hands in front of it. And I found it worked very, very well for that. It was able to follow me around kind of like a little dog as I was walking around my yard. Now, it has a number of different video capture modes. Its highest mode is 4K at 30 frames per second, which is the same as what I had on the Phantom 4 last year. There are newer drones in the Phantom 4 line that can do 60 frames per second now at 4K. But this one will capture the 30 frames per second video at 100 megabits per second. That does require a faster SD card, but you will get much better video quality than I saw out of the drone that I bought last year. So that was good to see some improvement there. Not as much artifacts, especially when you've got a lot of fine detail on the ground and you've got a good amount of motion going on. So I was very pleased with the 4K output. 1080p at 60 frames per second I've often found to be the sweet spot on these drones. It's a much smoother video with some decent image quality, of course, with that. This one, though, now does slow motion video. It'll record 1080p at 120 frames per second. And what it will do is give you a 30 frames per second file. So everything is slowed down by a factor of 4. Very smooth slow motion. It looks really cool. I was walking around my backyard with purpose, and it even made me look cool, which was fun to do. So there's some really cool stuff you can do with this slow motion camera on here. I was also able to do that with a flyover with an island that's near where I live by the beach. It really gave a nice image of that island just very slowly going by. And it took about 2 minutes on the video, but it really was only about 30 seconds of actual flight. So really cool stuff. It really looks awesome, and I think it really kind of expands some of the creative things you can do with the drone. I would have loved to have seen 4K at 60 frames per second with this camera, but I'm sure at some point they will release a new version of this, probably within the next 8 months, that has it. That's the one thing with DJI. There's always a new product about 6 months away, and that's one of the things you have to deal with them. Now, the memory card goes on the back here. There's an SD card slot here along with a USB port. I think that is for maybe a firmware update if you're having trouble delivering it over the air. So you can put in a card like I've got here. I've got a 128 gigabyte card. It is kind of hard to get the cards out of it because they do recess themselves in there quite well. So it was a little hard to get the card in and out of it. It'll also give you about 8 gigabytes of internal storage, which is not a lot, but if you do happen to forget your card and the thing's in the air, you could probably capture a couple of minutes of video or some photos in the course of your flight. Now, another neat thing that this does is spherical panoramas. Let's take a look at that. So here is the output of a 360-degree pano that I shot with the drone the other day. And what's cool about this is that it's taking multiple photos and stitching them together in the air. And the final output is like a 15 megabyte file or so. It looks really cool. You get a lot of detail on this. There's a VR mode that you can turn on to put on your Google Cardboard or whatever and look around the images in a VR headset if you want. So you do have the ability to do some pretty cool stuff with this. You can even toss the image over to Facebook. You can have it do it through the SkyPixel site here, or if you'd prefer to do it yourself, I found this site, 360facebook.com, will put the proper metadata into the spherical image to get it over to Facebook. And what's cool is how the drone takes the picture. So when you initiate this mode, what will happen is the drone will keep adjusting its flight position and taking multiple pictures, and then it will stitch them all together inside the drone and write them to the SD card. It works really well most of the time. I did find an issue with it, though, when I was at the beach. We had a lot of waves at the beach that day. It was a pretty windy day, and the wave action was confusing that stitching algorithm. It couldn't find a stitch point, and it failed to do so at the beach, but it was able to do a fairly decent job of stitching the photos together here in a scene that didn't have a lot of variation as the camera was moving around. But it's pretty cool how it works. It will move the gimbal and the drone itself to stitch the image together. It takes it about a minute or two to do this, and it'll let you know when it's done doing its thing. But I thought it was kind of neat that it was able to generate one of these images inside the drone itself. So overall, I'm pleased with some of the features here on the camera. The quality is certainly better than it was on my Phantom 4, and I don't feel like I've given up anything moving from that larger drone to this smaller one. I was even surprised by how well this thing held up in high wind. I was at the beach that day with the wind really blowing, and although the drone was sometimes like flying almost sideways to keep itself steady, it was able to provide really smooth imagery, and the drone wasn't getting knocked around in the air as much as I thought it might, given the heavy winds we had that day. So really good stuff out of this thing. I'm going to upload some image samples to my extras channel so you can see those videos in their original resolutions and frame rate, so you can make a good determination about the quality for yourself. My only disappointment involves the slow motion footage. I really like the slow motion footage, but I wish the bit rate was a little faster so there'd be less compression artifacts, and I also would have liked to have gotten a file that was running at the native 120 frames per second so I could decide how slow to make the video. It just outputs a 30 frames per second file with that 4x reduction in speed locked in. It would have been nice to have some flexibility, maybe to run it at 60 frames per second as opposed to just 30. So there are a couple of things I'd like to see improve related to its slow motion video. Also, again, I'm not too pleased about the Wi-Fi connection between the controller and the drone. It's going to be a hit or miss kind of thing, and they have done better in some of their other products. But on the whole, this has been a very good experience for me so far. I like the portability of it and the fact that I'm not giving up any features to get this smaller form factor. It really is performing as well as my Phantom 4 performed, at least for the things that I was doing. I'm a casual drone pilot, I guess, and I just really wasn't using the drone all that much because I couldn't take it with me. This one I'm going to be able to fold up and bring with me anywhere with a case that will fit inside my luggage as opposed to being a piece of luggage itself. Now, one thing to keep in mind when you do buy a DJI product is that I can guarantee you within 8 months to a year there's going to be something new and better out. That is always the case with this company. They're constantly coming out with new products that essentially make their current ones obsolete. So just prepare yourself for that. There's never a good time to buy one of these things beyond the fact you really want to get one. Just know that you will see it quickly get eclipsed by whatever they come up with after that. So that's just kind of their nature here. But they keep getting better every time they come up with something. And this one I've had quite a bit of fun with, and I'm looking forward to playing with it this summer on my travels. So that's going to do it for this one. Let me know what you thought down in the comments below. Remember, we've got some video samples up on the extras channel that you'll also find in the video description. This is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching.
This channel is brought to you by the Lon.TV supporters, including gold-level supporters of the Black Eyed and Blues Music Hour podcast, Chris Allegretta, Gerard Newberg, and Kalyan Kumar. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/support to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/s.